Want to start bikepacking? Okay then, no messing around, let's get you started in the world of bikepacking. So you might think you want to go bikepacking, but are you sure you really do? To make that decision, you first need to understand what bikepacking really is. At its simplest, bikepacking is riding a bike for multiple days, either to somewhere or around somewhere, usually by choosing a more off-road, less travelled path. It can be one night or it can be weeks long. There are no fixed rules. For some people, bikepacking means events, fully self-supported routes where riders follow a set course, deal with whatever the trail throws at them, make it to checkpoints and try to complete the route as fast as possible over multiple days. That means long days, limited comfort, and a lot of time alone with your own thoughts. For others, bikepacking is slower and quieter, riding away from the built-up places, spending long hours on rough trails, and sleeping out in remote locations. Less about the destination and more about being out there for as long as possible. As bikepacking has grown, the line between bikepacking and bicycle touring has become less clear. Bikepacking is a form of bicycle touring, but the difference usually comes down to where you ride and how you want the journey to feel. Bicycle touring traditionally uses paved roads, quiet lanes, cycle lanes, and paths. It often passes through towns and cities with time to stop, rest, and explore. Bikepacking more often avoids those places, heading into the mountains, forests, and national parks on rougher surfaces that demand more effort and self-reliance. I am bringing this up because I see people commenting here not understanding why I would take a trail over a mountain instead of just staying on one of the country lanes. That is because that is what bikepacking truly is. If that does not sound like your thing, then bikepacking might not be for you, or at the very least, the route you follow will be more limited. Bikepacking often means riding rougher trails, fewer comforts, more isolation, and more responsibility for your own decisions. For some people, that is exactly the appeal. For others, it might not be. Understanding that is the first step in working out whether bikepacking is actually what you are looking for. I'm going to be honest with you here. I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is the bike you already own is probably the right bike, but maybe not. The bad news is it really depends on how remote and rugged you want to go. I could sit here and say the bike you own is the bike you should use, and it is. However, if you own a bike that is not suitable for the conditions you are going to be riding in, that would be reckless for me to advise and for you to do. Because this video is aimed at people who want to start bikepacking, I'm going to assume you probably do not have a lot of experience and are not looking to explore the most rugged and remote corners of the earth. With that being said, the bike you own probably is good enough to get you going and take you on an adventure. Depending on the bike you have, that might mean choosing a more suitable route though. As we learned in the previous section, bikepacking does mean travelling on lesser travelled paths and off-road trails. So which bike is right? There are 4 things I would say make the right bike and should be taken into consideration. First is size and fit. It's pretty obvious, but to go bikepacking you need a bike that fits you and you are comfortable riding. Bikepacking consists of multi-day riding, so comfort matters. Second is mechanical condition. The bike does not have to be perfect, but it does need to be reliable. Scratches and scuffs are fine, but you want to make sure it's mechanically sound and able to handle the beating that off-road trails can deliver. A good understanding of how to maintain your bike is just as important. Third is tyres, are probably one of the most important parts of a bikepacking bike. Bikepacking is off-road, so a good set of tyres to keep you rolling is essential. The tyres you choose will depend on how remote you want to go. The bigger the tyre, the more volume and grip you get. Narrower tyres tend to roll faster over smoother terrain but offer less grip. It really depends on where you plan to ride. If you have less experience riding off-road, I am more inclined to recommend a more mountain bike style tyre. Your bike will limit the maximum tyre size you can fit, so I would recommend going for the biggest tyre your bike can accommodate while still leaving enough room for mud clearance. As a general rule, at least for most of the UK, something close to the 50mm range for gravel bikes, which is just under 2 inches, works well. For mountain bikes though, around 2 to 2.3, 2.4 inches is most common. This gives you a good balance between rolling efficiency on smoother terrain while still being capable off-road. For beginners, it is more important to focus on being able to ride the off-road sections comfortably than outright speed when you're on the more smoother paved surfaces. Fourth is gearing. Because bikepacking is off-road, try your best to have the easiest gearing you can afford or your bike can take. Off-road riding is often lumpier than road riding, and climbs are usually steeper than their road counterparts. The easier the gearing, the less likely you are to end up pushing your bike up climbs. It is better to find yourself spinning a bit too much on the road than not being able to pedal up steep climbs and hills. Remember, bikepacking is multi-day and you will likely be carrying more weight. Gears you might never use on an unloaded bike can become essential once it's loaded. As you can see, the right bike can vary. It is probably the one you already own, but depending on where you want to ride, you may want to make sure you have the biggest tyres possible and the easiest gearing available. When it comes to bikepacking and what to take, there is again, of course, a lot of different choices, and a lot of them choices are once again dictated by where and when you want to ride, and who you are. But there are some things that are essential in nearly anywhere you might go. The first is obvious: a waterproof jacket. Even in the summer, even if you are pretty sure it's not going to rain, a waterproof jacket is an essential item to always take. A waterproof jacket not only will protect you from the obvious rain, but also wind and slightly colder mornings or evenings on or off the bike. Sticking with clothes then, you will also want to think about how long each day you will be riding and how long you will spend off the bike. If you are just planning to be riding the majority of the time, it's important to pack clothes that are quick drying and comfortable to ride in. If you plan to spend time off the bike, then it might be worth having some off the bike clothes. I personally just carry an extra pair of riding clothes that I just keep clean and never actually ride in them unless I absolutely need to. If I end up visiting somewhere or staying in a hotel, for example, I can just wear them clean riding clothes. Being packable also helps a lot. You don't really want to wear stuff that absorbs water and takes forever to dry. The problem with bikes is carrying space is always going to be limited. So making sure you can carry multiple items of clothing is the best way, so you have the most options for the ever-changing conditions you will likely encounter, while not overloading yourself. Whether you want to wear specific cycling clothing like bib shorts or not completely depends on what you are comfortable with. Using the layering system is going to make the times where the weather is not at its best that little more tolerable, and that includes multiple pairs of socks. It's always best to take a few extra pairs of socks while bikepacking. Another thing I think is a pretty essential item to take is lights. Even if you are not planning to ride at night, take some bike lights and ideally some kind of head torch. While bikepacking routes are more off-road, it's not unheard of to have the odd road slog where you might need bike lights of some kind. And even if no roads and no people need to see you, it can and does happen quite often that you go into the night even when not planning to, especially while looking for a camp spot. Some form of sleeping system is going to be needed too, whether that be a bivvy, a hammock, a tarp or a tent. Carrying something for shelter is a must for multi-day adventures. Again, packable gear is what you are looking for. While weight is important, the smaller it packs, the better. It is more about getting it on your bike. A sleeping bag to stay warm is essential. If you can afford a down sleeping bag or a synthetic down sleeping bag, it's definitely worth the investment in my opinion, for the weight to warmth ratio. The sleeping bag you choose ultimately needs to keep you warm for the conditions you are likely to encounter. So when choosing a sleeping bag, keep an eye on the comfort level rating, but bear in mind that it is just a guide and that a lot of these are based on the average women. Men are said to sleep a bit warmer, but honestly it's all subjective because everyone is different. I'd always recommend just going slightly warmer than what you predict you will need. It's much better to be hot in your tent than too cold. Some form of sleeping mat will be essential for the vast majority of people to keep them warm from the ground. Once you have packed spare clothes and your sleeping system, then it's a case of carrying everything you need for day-to-day riding. That means food and water. Learning how to manage this takes a bit of trial and error for most people. That's why it's important to do test rides and get an idea of how much food and water you can comfortably carry and how your body and mind manages that. The next set of items you must take is spares and repairs. You can't foresee everything that could possibly go wrong, but it's important to cover most bases. That includes patch kits and tyre boots for tyre repair. If you are riding tubeless, then plug kits also. Take a minimum of 2 inner tubes, and yes, even if you are riding tubeless. A good multi-tool, ideally with a chain tool or carry a separate one, a spare quick link for that chain, rear mech hangers, and also some tyre levers. That's probably the bare minimum you are going to want to take, but the longer, more remote adventures, you may want to consider more of the above and add extra like a spare spoke or 2, a spoke key, jockey wheels. Honestly, you can go on and on. The idea though is to look at your bike and know you can fix as much as possible, because it's not if it breaks, it's when. One last thing I will add to what you should take, but if you want a more in-depth guide to bikepacking, check out the Ultimate UK Bikepacking Guide over on the main channel, Keep Smiling Adventures, is some kind of mapping. Whether you want to use paper maps or a GPS device is up to you, but you will need something to keep you going in the right direction. While you will often hear that there is no wrong way to pack your bike, I will disagree with that slightly, because there is a correct way and an incorrect way. Don't get me wrong, you can put whatever you want on your bike wherever you like, but the correct way to pack the bike is evenly. You don't want to load everything on the rear, and you don't want to load everything on the front, for example. That is the most common mistake people make when starting bikepacking. That's the only incorrect way to pack your bike though. You really need to spread the load throughout the bike. Whether you want to use racks or bikepacking bags or both is completely up to you. And there is no wrong way in that respect. Pack your bike evenly and it will ride much better, and avoid breaking things prematurely. When it comes to packing your bike, it is important to pack the bike in a way that makes sense, so think about what you will need often and what needs to stay dry. For example, if you are riding somewhere you will need that waterproof jacket often, have it in an easy and fast place to grab, but also not in the same place that your must stay dry gear is. For me it typically goes like this: tent on the front with a waterproof jacket for easy access. Having the tent here also means being able to pack the tent poles in parallel to the handlebars, so they fit quite nicely. 1 or 2 stem bottle bags. This often holds gloves or a water filter, and for me, camera gear. The frame bag is reserved for all spares and repair parts I may need as well as where I store all my food for quick, easy access, either while I'm riding or just when I've stopped. And on the back of the bike is everything that I need to stay dry. and stuff I just don't really need until camp. Spare clothes, my down jacket, spare socks, sleeping bag, that kind of thing. Typically, I won't need access to this in the day, so everything I need quick access to is either in the frame bag, stem bottle bags, or the front bag. This one is going to be based on your experience and what you are looking for, but the easiest way to go and find somewhere to ride is going to be from the likes of Cycling UK if you are in the UK, bikepacking.com if you are looking for routes more worldwide, although their routes do tend to be a little less beginner friendly for the most part. Or you can look on my website keepsmileadventures.com for all the routes I have ridden over on the main channel. I have done a much more in-depth video where I go over how to discover different trails, how to make routes, etc. in the UK, so I'd recommend clicking the video in the top right corner. But if you just want some recommendations on how to find your own, you can start with your local area and definitive maps. Just Google your county followed by definitive maps, and most counties nowadays have all the known rights of way digitally available. If you have no luck with that, then OS Map has essentially got all that definitive map data in one place. OS Maps isn't free, but not that expensive either, and do come in paper maps if you prefer. If you are lucky enough to still have a library, then often they have them too. To actually plot the routes for GPS devices, then you can use OS Maps for this, or other alternatives are Komoot and Ride GPS are the two big ones. Personally, I tend to plot using Komoot using a combination of definitive maps and OS Maps. Here in the UK, when looking for places to ride, you are looking for bridleways, byways, restricted byways, sometimes permissive bridleways. Again, head over to the Ultimate Guide for a much more in-depth video on what all these means. And that's it. That's how to start bikepacking in 26. Hope you enjoyed this one, and until next time, keep smiling and enjoy the adventure. Peace!